Ladies and gentlemen, it feels like an idol's audition. They told me to stand on the green spot. But anyway, Sanbonan, good morning. Good afternoon.
We have got to go down a bit.
Is
your
it?
mouth, not your ear.
Oh, okay, cool. But you can hear me at the back, eh? All right, thank you so much. I've been introduced, but before that, I would like to really thank the colleagues for the opportunity to share the status of our project. NRM, which is previously fondly referred to, and I think it's still being referred to as the Working for Water program. So I'll be very brief. I'll take you through that presentation. Thank you so much. It's really intimidating with the cameras in front of you. Yeah, especially after COVID. We've learned to go back to our shells. Yeah. So this is what I'll take you through. That's an outline. But before we get to the issues of vision and stuff, I'd like to give a background in terms of what we have spent over the years. I think the program director was fairly indicating that we haven't disappeared. We've always been around and contributing to the ecological integrity of the landscape over the years. Of course, there's been challenges, but we soldier on. So the next slide I'm going to share with you talks to investments that we would have made since the beginning of the program in the 90s, mid-90s that is. I think the famous launch by the then Minister Kara Asma was really the start of the great work that we've been doing over the years. From 1995 up to 2020. This is in the millions, as you can see. Over 15 billion has been invested up to 2020 financial year. That's a huge investment on the landscape in terms of clearing off invasive alien plants and implementing a suite of other programs in the ecosystem space and what we call land-based livelihoods improvement. So we really, I think we cannot really underscore the investment that government has made over the years. It's a huge investment. That's a graph indicating, just for those that are graphically inclined, just to show how we've been growing over the years. And this then takes you in terms of the spread or the footprint of the program nationwide. I think we've got a footprint. There is not a single province where we don't have programs, or projects being implemented. From up in Limpopo down to Cape Town, fortunately, or rather unfortunately, it's not from Cape to Cairo, which it was. The famous slogans would have gone. But yeah, that then tells us, shows us at least where we are currently active. And there we're doing clearing of invasive alien plants and implementing programs like the famous Working on Fire, which coincidentally, the headquarters of Working on Fire is in Mpumalanga. There's high altitude work that we're doing in difficult terrain or slopes that would not be easy for people to access. So we're implementing what we call high altitude teams. And there's Working for Ecosystem where we're doing off late, since I think about 2 or 3 MTF cycles, land management in the form of bush encroachment. These would be indigenous bush encroachment species where we put in teams to do what we call at times rangeland management and soil erosion control. So that's the suite of programs that we're implementing. And of course, how can I forget working for wetlands? Very important, I think. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think just that background paints a picture of how much investment the taxpayer is making on the landscape in terms of managing invasive alien plants and a number of these other NRM initiatives that we're implementing. And that's South Africans doing it for themselves, of course, through the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment of late, the Working for Water program and so forth. So going back perhaps maybe to the original picture, I would start with this slide. To tell you what the vision of NRM, remind you what the vision of NRM is first. What we seek to do is to support sustainable livelihoods for local communities through integrated landscape management and in an effort to find a balance or rather resilience of the ecological systems and foster issues of equity in terms of access to ecosystem services, especially when we talk local communities, we're talking about the users on the ground, whatever size or scale or type of user on the ground. It might be water, it might be wood, it might be grazing, it might be a number of uses that people depend on the landscape. And in actual fact, that is the natural capital that carries the whole economy, in fact. We know that invasive alien plants are famed for causing havoc, especially in our water-scarce country, challenging issues of water availability. So by doing this work, we're ensuring that the users on the ground, whether it's a small-scale farmer, subsistence farmer, to a big commercial farmer, they've got access to the resource. So ours is to protect that resource and ensure that this is done equitably. So because we work in mountain catchments, we work, and sometimes maybe the reason why we might not be visible is because we're busy high up there in the mountains, not necessarily in the streets in the town. In Bombela, where the Tithonia and yellow bells, Tacoma, is wreaking havoc. As a result, it's important that we have all the role players so that we can tackle the problem at every corner of the catchment, be it high up in the catchment areas where we're working and down here where everybody sees the problem. The problem that we haven't seen as if we drive around town is that there's big pine trees and gum trees and so forth that are really siphoning the water from high up there in the catchments. So it's important that we all come to the party. There will be opportunities. There are opportunities for us to play a role, all of us, to ensure that all of us at least have got that access to the resource that is usable. Next up, I'm taking you through the different types of activities that we're doing as the Working for Water program specifically. This is just to remind you, colleagues, I think we all know what we're doing, but we want to sustainably control terrestrial invasive alien plants. This is now through the Working for Water specifically, as well as aquatic invasive alien plants. And we manage those in inaccessible and high altitude areas, as I've already indicated. Darlene here does our biological control. She will share, and I think a lot of you know her very well. She's the specialist in terms of the hojas that go and eat up these problem plants. And we do early detection through, of course, programs that we're funding in Sanbi. They do the 1A species and do the rapid response in terms of eradicating those populations of category 1A species. So this is just to remind us of what the Working for Water program's activities are. And next up, I'm taking you through what would be our clearing priorities in the province. These are quaternary catchments that have been mapped based on data that comes from our different partners in academia and other research institutions, CSIR, blah, 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 blah. All those clever people tell us that for us to make an impact, these are the highest priority areas for us to work on. The red is the highest priority cotton recatchments, and of course the green are the least priority. And you can see that Llewellyn, in terms of invasives, Kruger National Park is not such a high priority area, but because it's conservation, we always make special concessions so that we are present there, visible and being seen. But in terms of us gaining or making the most of the investment, the best we can do is invest in these red areas. And of course, in that order, it flows. The next up would be the orange categories. So that is where we should be present. So if you don't see us round about here and there, it's because maybe we are still stuck high up here in the crevices, high up there in the canyons and on Blade and areas like that. So that's the picture. If we're going to be providing support to the communities or land users on the landscape, we will also use that similar criteria in terms of where would it make most sense for us to work. So that's the picture, colleagues, in terms of our priorities. And then footprint, where we've mapped little polygons, areas that we actually got people that are swinging the pangas. Fortunately, no one is going around with the chainsaw in Mpumalanga. So these yellow dots that you see, these are areas that we have actually mapped. And you can see they almost align perfectly with these red areas. So that's where we've mapped and done work, and we want to continue doing work because it is in priority areas. So those are those that know our language. We call them NBELs. I don't know why they call them NBELs, but these are polygons or areas that have been mapped. And we know that here there is a wattle, so much of it, what is the size, and perhaps maybe we can make projections to say how is it going to expand or grow as a population. So that's the footprint in terms of our NRM working photo programs. Briefly, maybe linking up with that slide of what investment we've made in terms of the national picture, because that's what I was giving you initially. This would then be figures, maybe, you said 5 years. You know, my arithmetic tells me 5 years from now was 2017. But of course, with COVID, we've had a period of quietness. I think for 2021 and 2020, we didn't get much done. But over the years, since 2017, just as an indication, sorry Vanessa, I had to put you there, and your former supervisor. We've worked on 90,000 hectares. Of course, this 90,000 is combined initial and follow-up. Areas that we have gone to clear as a first time, and then areas that we've gone to revisit and do the follow-up on. So the break is about 45,000 of each initial and follow-up. This is just figures, data coming from our WIMS system. Those that are familiar with our working for water information management system. And that works out to about 360 contracts that we've issued to small, medium, and micro enterprises. Because part of what we are doing, other than just fixing the landscape, there is an economic or socio-economic benefit for the participants or the workers in the project. So much contracts and 88 small and medium micro enterprises that we've worked with. The current situation, we only have currently 4. Yeah, the slide, sorry, I used an old slide. We only currently have 4 contracts in the entire province, and there's a bit of background. It's a tragic situation, really. And these are, this bladder restoration project has been terminated. The implementer is pulled out of this. This is the Kruger to Canyons biosphere. That was supposed to be the implementing entity for this project. They've pulled out because of some, we couldn't find each other in some of the contract terms. And then we have what we call a Hlanzeni North project. Forgive me for the font, it's not as visible. A Hlanzeni North project that operates around the Hazy View, Kuhlu areas. This was going to be around the Maripskop and part of the Lowveld plantations. And then Mkondo Wakkerstrom, it's active. The contract is still valid. Then we have MTPA, Invasive Alien Species Program, and Sabi Sands, the nature reserve, private nature reserve. They're implementing one of our projects there as an implementing entity. Some of these projects are currently not in field because of some contractual and compliance issues. It is really tragic because we're quite big on compliance and enforcing regulatory things in terms of how we do the contracting. So we find that some service providers find it a bit of a challenge to hit the ground running because they've got a lot of spade work they must do in the background before they are permitted to go and work there. But most of these contracts, as you can see, the end date of these is 2023 March 31, so the end of the financial year. And after that, we don't know. We're facing an uncertain future, but we are currently busy with contracting. Part of the reason I came in late and I'm going to leave early is because we are working on finalizing the tender, both the regional tender and national tender, to ensure that these contracts are found to be infilled, and we continue the brilliant work we've been doing over the years, even if we say so ourselves, without much of a challenge. I think the minister was asked a question, I think it's on the articles elsewhere, asked a question in Parliament about the E1590 tender. Some people might have heard about it. It was advertised. Some of you may have actually been part of the people that or entities that put in bids. So that tender has been cancelled, and we were hoping that those contracts would have been active from this financial year. So we have to start from scratch. And nationally, there's something in the tune of 17,000 jobs that are in the almost facing uncertainties. So we're working very hard. Those are the current things that we are busy with to ensure that we do the contracting properly in line with all the prescripts and what the Auditor General tells us or the National Treasury dictates of us to do. So that is the picture, colleagues. There's a number of other things that we are busy with, collaborating with some of you here. I'm not sure if the IUCMA is here. There's amazing work that the IUCMA, Inkomati and Usutu Catchment Management Agency is doing. They've recently appointed a project. So we call a service provider to implement a project in the Sabi catchments. So there's a lot of work that we're doing in the background, supporting all the efforts that seek to ensure that we are present on the landscape and invasives don't really escape us as we are seeing. With that said, thank you so much for the opportunity. We will gladly take questions via DMs. Direct messaging. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brendon. No, you're not off the hook. There's no direct messaging nonsense here. This is direct. This is direct to speaker. We have the gentleman in front from Barberton, that's right.
Thank you, Brendon. That was very interesting. But you never mentioned follow-ups. That's so important.
Oh, yes.
You know, so many of the areas that I've been involved with around Barberton, they haven't followed up and they're worse than they ever were. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That's a sad reality. I did mention it though, but you know, it's never enough. You can never do enough follow-up, especially where you find that you've had an established population, for example, of lantana that has been there for years. You can't say after doing 3 treatments then you've solved the problem. Once you do the clearing, you must be ready with resources to continue the work until the natural vegetation is able to at least be your defense. It's very important that we do the follow-ups. And that is actually what we would prioritize to be doing with any new contracts that we have in place. But thanks for that comment.
With regards to, maybe I can just ask a question from my side. Also with regards to follow-ups on private landowners where you've done clearing and they haven't done the follow-up. What is happening in those regard? Because we see it in other provinces. Clearing has been done, then the landowner actually has a duty to keep it clear and it's not being done. What's the situation in Mpumalanga?
Yeah, what we do after we've done the mandatory follow-ups on private land is we engage with our colleagues from compliance as well as the Directorate Land Use and Source Management and the Department of Agriculture. We sort of hand it over to the land user or landowner to maintain. And part of the compliance that we've been contributing, compliance inspections that we've been contributing as NRM, is we've prioritized to inspect those areas that we've handed over with the hope that the law can eventually take its course. Unfortunately, we are not capacitated or equipped to really do the enforcement. Hence, we have these other role players that we have to work hand in hand with. So that is what we do. We hand it over and then we do the compliance inspections and then leave it to the authorities, or at least those that have the teeth to bite, with the hope that it really gets, because what it means is that that investment would have been watered down the drain if we don't do anything about it. So I think that's the message that we must communicate and ensure that beyond just communicating, we have examples of non-compliant landowners that have taken, because it's a form of a subsidy, because it improves the quality or the value of the land, and not really thereafter maintaining it. So that's the situation. We have, in certain instances, our approach with our project coordinators and area managers on the ground is that we would extend a further hand in the form of herbicide assistance to those landowners that still feel they need some kind of support. Especially in the Highveld, we've had landowners that we've been continuing with herbicide assistance, but it's really up to the landowner. Thank you so much.
A few more questions. Get to you now, sir.
Good day. In terms of bankrupt bush slum boss, what is your progress in controlling, especially in the Highveld?
Zero.
Reason why?
You know, what we need to eventually get to understand is that, and I think it links with this question that you asked, the land users on the ground have to take the initiative so that these projects or problems are actually solved by the people that are at the receiving end. It's well and good for government to go and start a project in Slangbos, in a particular farm, and only do that for 2 treatments and then leave. We spread the word when I first got around here in 2013. We spread the word because I then started driving around the Highveld and see the problem that Slangbos is creating. I made a special request to procure herbicide for land user assistance. Not a single landowner has actually come through. Even those that actually made us make that. You know, we went to what's the name of the place? Lothe, for example, in a certain farm. But yeah, I guess we have to do a lot of advocacy work and have the experts on the ground. It's tragic, really, because you know you can only assist landowners, and that is the approach. But we must encourage them to realize that there is support that is available, however limited, because it's not going to solve the problem. We have to slice the cake as thin as possible so that all of them at least get some kind of subsidy or assistance. Unfortunately, it's zero. And I must just say, I shouldn't be saying this, that herbicide that we procured, it's a liability to us because it's expired on our stores. And once it's expired, you have then the burden of actually having to either return it to the service, but basically dispose of it. And would depend on the partnerships with yourselves as Land Use and Source Management Directorate to encourage the landowners, especially in those areas where, you know, I think it's a problem in the grasslands areas, so that we can go and dump the herbicide there, hopefully solve the problem, not to create an environmental tragedy. Thank you.
Mike?
Okay, it's Mike. I'm from Silvic Chem. We do forestry consulting.
You've just switched it off.
We do forestry consulting. I have concerns about some of the recommendations. For instance, we went to a farm recently. Your people had supplied trichloram to the man upstream, and within 200 metres of that applications there were orchards. Now we know trichloram is a highly toxic product in this type of situation. Bad recommendation, and a very extremely dangerous one. We've seen in the Sabi Sands bad recommendations coming from your people. Pathinium, they're recommending the use of glyphosates where we shouldn't be, because the whole aim is to preserve grass cover. Now, somewhere along the line, and please take this criticism in good faith, your people are not giving good recommendations, and they were insisting that Sabi Sand use glyphosates for that control. Now, the whole aim of any of these programs is vegetation management. It's not weed control as such. We've had another problem with the products you give out. I regularly get telephone calls from a person. Someone from your department drops some chemicals off. How does he use it? Now, you cannot drop chemicals off this person unless you train them how to use it. So please take that in good faith, because you're heading for a disaster otherwise.
I can just say that our next speakers, which will be talking about the herbicide use of invasive alien species control, will handle that. There is a whole new protocol which is going to be coming through, and we'll handle that now in the next discussion.
Some of the consequences could be disastrous.
No, I think everybody acknowledges that, but listen to the next speakers, and then we'll have a better understanding of the way forward. The lady in front. Oh, you'll listen to next, yes. So that's why we have the program in a very specific order to deal with all types of queries.
And you're so lucky Debbie Muir is not here.
Oh, yeah.
You would have been thrown thrown out.
Any more questions for Brendon?
Can we have a contact address?
For? Brendon.
There we go.
Where we go?
There we go.
There we go, up there.
Yeah.
Mobile number, if you can't see that, is 066 489 3881. Got it. Brendon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was actually, give Brendon a round of applause for that wonderful presentation.